afternoon. It makes me realize like I'm so out of touch, and I'm old, and I'm a loser now, and like I can remember watching. I went down to the draft at the Dome when the Raptors took Damon Stoudemire. That was their first draft. That was the. It was at the Rogers Center. It was the Sky Dome back then. I think I was up in the 500 level. I want to say the Raptors picked either 8th or 9th. I think it was 8th. And I remember being down there at that point, and guys were rocking crazy suits back then. But that was kind of the era when I got into the NBA, like late 90s. And I'm watching last night. I'm like, look at this suit. Like, look at the gear on these guys. Look at how much money they're going to make immediately. But also, like, the TikTok stuff and social media stuff. Like, I try to stay up to date on Twitter, on Instagram. TikTok I've never got into. And it's just a completely different world. Like, it's a completely different world, and I feel completely out of touch.
I got out of the Instagram game a few years ago because it was borderline addiction at that point. I self-diagnosed, and I haven't found my way back. But in saying that, I haven't been on TikTok at all either, so I don't really know what that social media is all about. But Gradey Dick seems like he's got it figured out.
He sure does. Yeah, I don't know what kind of following he has, but I guarantee he's got a bigger following today than he did yesterday. And I don't know. He seems to be heavily invested. And I'm curious how that carries over to being a professional. You know, it's one thing when you're in the room with the boys and, you know, you're going back to the dorm room afterwards, or, you know, you're all hanging out wherever you're hanging out. It's another thing to go up to, you know, some guy who's 35 years old, like Otto
That's
Porter.
the thing, man. Like, like I can imagine, like, some 18-year-old kid like myself coming in, and if the 35-year-old grizzled veterans saw the TikToks and the goofiness, they would be like, they would be having discussions whether they even wanted this kid around. Like, what the hell is all this stuff? But Hayes, it's so different. There's not many 35-year-old grizzled guys around, and if there are, it's like they're doing it too.
Yeah.
You know what
true.
I mean? It's
That's
like
true.
the 35-year-old guy now. He seems like he's 24.
Oh,
there's no guy that's like the old grumpy old man saying, "What is that stupid stuff?" They're all doing it.
I couldn't imagine. Oh, you can comment on this too, because you would have been of the age sort of on the way out as I was on the way in. Like, I couldn't even imagine going to one of my first training camps and doing like a 360 in the shootout. Like, forget wearing some crazy suit to the game. Like, there was stuff I wasn't even thinking about doing for my job, let alone showing up to the rink wearing something outlandish, which just seems to be commonplace now.
Yeah, and listen, he shoots the lights out. Like, everyone's seen the scouting report, and obviously it feels like they drafted for need, but that's around where he was slated to go. Like, you look at mock drafts, you look at different lists that come out. It's not as if this was a reach. I think when they got to 13, the belief was there was a chance they were going to take this kid. And if you look at his highlights, which can be dangerous, right? Because everyone can put together a highlight. But this guy, he can shoot the lights out. By all accounts, high basketball IQ, cuts to the basket well. Defensively, will probably get torched early in his career. But, you know, last night I think what sticks out is, A, they kept the pick, but B, Siakam's still here. OG Anunoby's still here. By all accounts, they're still going to be talking to Fred VanVleet. So, you know, nothing major happened last night. Siakam didn't get flipped to Portland for the third pick. And, like, the reaction of fans, I heard Cos play this a bunch, and we can play it here. You know, Charlotte took Brandon Miller second overall. And everyone knew it was going to be one of those two guys, Miller or Scoot Henderson. Everyone knew it was going to happen. And it's not like this was some ridiculous reach where they took some kid that was going to go 7th or 8th or projected to go 7th or 8th, and it was a reach. I don't think anyone was surprised that it was Miller. And Charlotte was hosting a draft party, and you guys want to hear the reaction after they, you know, Silver gets up there and announces Brandon Miller? All right, let's play it.
2023 NBA Draft. The Charlotte Hornets select Brandon Miller.
So
dude,
that's
they
nice.
wanted that Scoot dude.
Yeah.
That seemed like one of the NFL reactions. You know, when they draft the wrong quarterback and people in New York would lose their minds. That's that reaction.
Exactly.
How do you feel if you're the pick That's the reaction.
Well, it's coming back to you, right? Like you're going to be aware that it happened. It doesn't have to affect your career, and I think it's a pretty quick lesson into the world of professional sports.
It's acknowledged, though, Hayes. You're like, oh, God, they hate me already? Come on.
Exactly. Or they love some other guy. It's also, a lot of it is ignorance, right? Like how many of the fans that were in that party have seen Miller play that many times and have seen Scoot Henderson play, right? It's like, how much can you really, truly know about who these players are? And again, it wasn't a reach as if they didn't take one of those two guys. But I think it's probably a quick, I guess, baptism into the fact of the matter is fans are very fickle in pro sports.
No.
If you can believe it. And if this guy shows up and goes off, if he puts up 35 points his first game at home, they're going to love him, right? Immediately they're going to love him. Be chanting his name. Jerseys will be sold through the roof. That's the way it goes.
So is that kid, the one that they drafted, is he the one that was talking about Jordan, or was that Scoot?
Yes. It was him, and he was from Alabama. He had an unbelievable freshman
season. And he made the comments regarding Jordan.
Yeah. And,
and
now,
Jordan had influence on the pick, and he still picked him.
By all accounts, MJ had a very significant impact on that pick. But he's also getting out. So,
Dude,
Miller
that's what I can't understand, how anyone else involved, Hayes, they get the information that Jordan says he's out. You're not having any influence on anything on the way out the door.
It is strange. It is very
Even
strange.
if you're Michael Jordan?
Dude, I don't care who it is. You're not going to be a part of it. So why do you care about the pick?
Right.
Like, there's an ego right there.
But what about,
it's like I'm selling my team. I'm done with this. But by the way, I'm the guy making the selection. That's insane.
I kind of appreciate it in a way. He's like, what the hell do I care? He's been a terrible owner too, right?
Dude,
like,
he's a pretty good investor.
Very good investor. But as an owner, terrible. Yeah. And you're right. You were about to say Barkley. That's why their relationship fell apart, was because Barkley was being honest. He was being 100% truthful. He's like, as an owner, this guy, like, Charlotte has been a disaster under his ownership. Now, to your point about investment, he's out and he's made a lot of money. Did
our friend Larry Tannenbaum see that? And maybe he's taking a page out of Jordan's book, cashing in on some of that equity.
I wonder if Larry had any impact on the pick last night. Imagine Larry was kicking around and went up to Messiah and said, "I want this Gradey Dick kid."
Yeah, he saw him walk in with that red Wizard of Oz jacket, and he said, "That's our guy.
That's my guy. I don't care if I'm out of here. The pension plan that's coming in here, they're going to appreciate that kind of style."
Yeah.
The Raps end up taking Gradey Dick last night, and not a lot of surprises otherwise. We'll catch up with Leo Rautins a little bit later in the hour. I'm seeing online, I guess, Kyle Dubas. You guys seeing some Dubas quotes starting to circulate here? I guess Kyle was doing some media veil down in Pitt, and naturally, people up in Toronto, they're tracking what he's saying, and they just want to hear what he has to say about Toronto or the Leafs or whatever. And we don't have the audio, but I have the quote in front of me here. This is Josh Yohe tweeted this out, who is a writer down there in Pitt. Dubas was asked about Toronto, I guess. I don't know if it was the city or his experience, and he said, quote, "It's a great city, but Pittsburgh feels like home."
He hasn't even lived there for a week.
He's been there for like a week and a half. But Pitt has got a very Sault Ste. Marie vibe to it.
It feels a little bit unauthentic when when you go to a concert and they all stand up and they go, "Oh, Toronto, the best crowd, I love it here." And meanwhile, they had to ask for, "Hey, which city am I in again?"
Right, exactly. Yeah, of course, I think to be fair to Kyle, what else is he going to say?
Of course,
I know, and I don't get why people are trying to make this into some he had something in the works. That's why he asked for more money and more this and more that, and they didn't get it. So then he left and went to the team that offered it to him. Yeah, it's not like an ugly separation.
No, but people love to point out hypocrisy. And a month ago, Dubas was in front of the media saying, "It's Toronto or nowhere. It's Toronto or I'm taking a break." And now he's in Pitt going, "It feels like home." People just love to point it out.
Yeah, well, and I think that's worthy of being pointed out. I think most people understand that this was probably in the works or in his back pocket at a minimum. But I also don't believe that there's going to be any legs to the idea that Dubas is going to turn heel here and be someone that, there's some immediate connection between Toronto and Pitt. That didn't happen when Lou left. Like when Lou was walked out and Dubas got the gig, no one cared about what Lou was doing anymore.
Right.
And I will say that Dubas was more polarizing, possibly, and it did seem like there was more of an attack from both sides, Dubas supporters and those that really didn't like his vision. And I have no doubt he's going to have an impact on this market for a long time, because you can speak to other GMs of the past. Brian Burke still is famous in Toronto, even though he was only here for a few years. Dave Nonis is still a guy that people are familiar with. Obviously, Lou. And the same thing will apply with Kyle. But, like, Leaf fans, some of the reaction to these comments are wild, man, as if, what else is he going to say? What else is he going to say? He's got to cater.
Why would it offend you? He works in Pittsburgh now. That's his home.
He's got to cater to the hometown.
It's childish, man.
He's got to cater to Pitt. He's got to. And does it really feel like home? Probably not. Been there for about a week and a half. More than likely not.
Does it do anybody any good ever to dive into Twitter comments?
Usually breaking down Twitter comments can lead to some abrasive reaction. True enough. And there's no context on Twitter. Like, you look at what happened last night in the NHL with the jersey announcement, right?
Yeah.
The announcement that players are no longer going to wear jerseys during warm-up. And Bettman did an interview right after the Board of Governors with Elliot Friedman. We can't play the audio here, but I think most people have seen it. And he was relaying the information as to why they made the decision, right? And he used the word distraction. And when that word was used and it was put on Twitter, it was a bomb went off, right? A bomb went off, because I'm not sure how many people actually listened to the clip and listened to what he had to say. And listen, we've had a lot to say about Gary Bettman over the years, right? We have broken down a lot of his commentary, and we have been critical of him many, many times. I think, having heard him say what he said and explain what he said, I don't believe he was speaking as it's a distraction to our game, right, to the way the players are preparing. I think what he was meaning by that was it was distracting from the overall messaging and promotion and theme of the night, which is going to continue, right? The players will not be wearing pride jerseys in warm-up, military garb in warm-up, St. Patrick's Day and whatever is happening throughout individual markets throughout the league. But
there's a serious connection to the jersey, though. It's like people have bypassed the fact that teams are celebrating the night,
right,
and saying, "Oh, that doesn't matter. You're not wearing the jerseys, so you're a bunch of idiots." It's like there's an attachment to the jerseys. I'm just glad that organizations celebrate the night. I think that's good. There's a bunch of organizations, like the one down the street, they honor a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But now there's the attachment that the jersey has to be on. The tape's not good enough. The celebration itself's not. You got to have the jersey or it's not good enough. And that one reason, I'm not sure why that is. The night, I don't know why the jersey has that attachment. It's like if they don't wear that, then the whole night is not good enough.
Well, exactly, and I think that's what Bettman was trying to express. Again, if I'm getting this wrong, then we'll retract it and we'll comment on it more in the future. But what I took out of it was all of the nights are continuing, right? All of the different things that they are going to be actively supporting will continue, like Pride Nights will be continuing, and it will be happening within the building. And I think what Bettman was indicating was it stopped being about the actual messaging and being proactive and positive in nature and being inclusive, and it just became about, well, one guy didn't wear it. Yeah. Exactly, and that is true. That's what ended up happening.
He's not wrong on that point.
It ended up being, well, who's wearing it, who isn't, why aren't you wearing it? And then it stopped being about, wait a minute, 17 other guys are, and the team and the league are doing something here that they are trying to put effort into. And, the jerseys in warm-up, they weren't going to change the world. They didn't change the world. And then them not wearing them in warm-ups in the future, it will not have an effect on the live, how people are going to live their lives.
And it takes away from all the hard work for a guy like Mark Fraser does that goes into the night, and everyone just – they bypass it, and they're like, it's not good enough if the jersey's on out there.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's my thought. I'm just telling you what's out there.
That's been the reaction.
Yeah, if there's not the jersey, it's not good enough by a country mile. And that's the reaction on Twitter. People are disappointed. They're like, They're not honoring they're still having the nights, the acknowledgement nights. But they're not even being appreciated because the jerseys aren't a part of it.
Or it's just too big of a distraction, as Hayes was saying, which is what Gary Bettman was alluding to.
Well, and again, not a distraction for the players performing. Again, it's about, I think and I'm trying to interpret what he was saying, is that I think what he was trying to indicate was it stopped being about the actual messaging, and it became about who's wearing it or who isn't wearing it. And I think the media is guilty of this as well. Like, we were tracking it throughout the league, not only in Toronto. Team X would have a, Pride night or whatever, and immediately would start trending. Well, this player's not. And then it just was that story. It stopped being about the other players that are, all of the different initiatives that are going into it, all of the different support that's trying to be cultivated. And I think from that standpoint, I can understand what he's saying. And, I think it'll be on individual players to continue to do whatever they choose to do in terms of being involved. And I think we've already heard from a lot of players who are saying, I'm going to keep doing stuff. I think if the players want to use, let's say it's Pride Night, if they want to tape their stick a certain way, they'll be allowed to do that.
Yeah, why not?
And they should, absolutely. And,
I think it's unfortunate that I think it's a human flaw, quite honestly, that we tend to focus on the negative. So, to your point, one guy doesn't wear the jersey, but 17 others do, and we focus on the one guy. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't have to be that way, but I think that's just the way we're wired. And that's just,
that's what's going to get the reaction, and it became very volatile. And let's not be naive here. I think there's probably a Players Association angle on this too, right?
Sure.
Like, I think the PA, you guys have been a member of it. I kind of got the impression like the PA was possibly going to push to put an end to it as well. And I think there needs to be an explanation for that if that's the case, right? If Marty Walsh, who's the new executive director of the PA, who was down there at the Board of Governor meetings, which is a rarity. You don't see that too often. If the Players Association were possibly pushing that, then I think there needs to be an explanation. And I haven't seen that yet today.
Well, you never know how many guys are also sitting in the room saying, well, not that they're not inclusive, but just maybe they don't want to wear the jersey, but they throw it on anyway. But behind closed doors, maybe to your point with the union discussion, is like, if there was a vote internally that said, okay, guys, who wants to wear the jersey, who doesn't? Maybe more guys are like, yeah, I could do without the jersey. Not that they're not inclusive of the whole thing. Just, I don't want to be forced into wearing a certain garb.
That's it, Peter. Like, if I played, I would wear the jersey. I would have no problem with it. I would happily do it. I would want to do it. But there's some guys, for whatever reason, like not Russian-born players, that would just say, I don't feel the need that I have to do that. And it's like anything else. You're not telling people what to do these days. And that's kind of a factor in it, too. And whatever you think of that mentality, their reasoning is, I'm here to play hockey, and this is an inclusive situation, but I don't feel the need to do that. And that's the way some of them feel. But they do it anyway, so I feel anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about the PA. You have to represent everybody, regardless of how you may feel about it. We say it all the time with suspensions. You see someone who, hits someone from behind, they got to represent that person. You're like, well, wait a minute. That was just an elbow to the head or a vicious high stick, but you have to because they're in the union. And if players are voicing some sort of, discomfort or whatever, regardless of how you feel about it, it's incumbent on the PA and the executive director to take that into consideration. And I don't know if that happened here or not, but, that's the kind of stuff that would likely happen behind closed doors and likely happen in the Board of Governors. And then Bettman came out and made the announcement that he made. Leo Rautins will join us in about 10 minutes. Leo's coming up on Gradey Dick and what he can bring to the Raptors, what else to expect around the NBA moving forward now that we're through the draft. Jays are back home, and Oakland is in town. It has to be time to floor it, right? Offensively, it is mandatory that they floor it here because this A's team is horrible. They've lost 8 in a row.
Dude, I don't even do that because
I
you know what happens when you do that. They get swept.
No,
if
come
they
on.
get swept
by
here,
the A's?
If you get swept by the A's at home, we're talking catastrophic reactions.
Well, dude, you don't ever chirp a team before the series starts. That's a known fact.
Well, I'm doing it, though. I'm not saying Vladdy's sitting there at home plate saying we're going to torch you guys.
Vladdy's counting his home runs before the game starts.
Well, he could probably use one at the Dome, right? He probably could use one, and I have a sneaking suspicion that old Vladdy might hit one possibly tonight. I think he's paying like plus 280 on FanDuel. I think his uncle's in town helping him with his swing, and I thought I read that. I think Wilner reported that his uncle like is breaking down his tape and he's coming in, and I wonder how the hitting coach Guillermo Martinez feels about that. Vladdy's uncle's out there working on mechanics, if that's actually happening. So more on that a little bit later this afternoon. Dear Hazy B in a couple of hours. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Jeff O'Neill, Peter Holland. We've got Leo Rautins coming up here just a few moments. Bob McKenzie will join us. Bobby Mack. Man, it's a rare day when Bob McKenzie comes out of the woodwork and decides to join us here. And obviously the NHL draft is right around the corner. I saw Craig and Julia doing a mock draft today on TSN. And the Leafs have 3
Who
picks.
went first?
I think they went with Bedard. I think.
Is there a world? Is there a world where he doesn't go first?
No, there is not a world where he doesn't go
Don't
first.
you think they have their like main priority? They already got him. Like they have to like spend a left winger and a centerman to play with the guy in his first year, don't they?
I would personally be shocked if they weren't the worst team in the league.
Again?
Yes, they're horrible, dude. Look at that.
This is going to be like you're predicting like an Edmonton Oilers of 10 years ago where they had the first overall pick a few seasons in a row.
I wouldn't be shocked. I would. And listen, dead last is can be difficult to predict. Who saw that coming from Columbus this year? You had Anaheim that was awful, but I don't think they're anything but one of the 7 or 8 worst teams in the league for sure.
Dangerous game. Dangerous game when you bring in the top dog and he'll be like, we better be getting better here pretty quickly.
Well,
what did it take McDavid to make the play? It actually might have took McDavid a couple years, didn't it?
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Matthews,
but
it took 1.
the thing is, Draisaitl was already there. Nugent Hopkins was already there. Like, Bedard doesn't have that luxury. Like, they have had other high picks that I'm sure are coming. I'm sure they have players within the system. But I don't know, man. I'm not banking on Chicago being anything but lurking around the lottery again next year. Fully expect that. And
heard it here first, Hazy B.
Yeah.
Timestamp it.
I don't think that's a hot take, Pete. I really don't. I think you have to be anticipating a long struggle still in Chicago.
Setting the bar low.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing about culture, right? Like we're dealing with it with the Raptors right now. Like if you want to blow it up and try to reload, man, you can go so far south that it takes you a long time to get out, and you lose your identity. It is something I'm sure they're thinking about with the Raptors right now. And to get into it, we're joined now by our TSN Raptors analyst. Here's our buddy Leo Rautins. How you doing, Leo?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
Doing well. You getting flashbacks of your draft night? Do you remember wearing a red jacket and red shoes when you were getting drafted, or what?
Hey, I can tell you one thing. Without knowing anything about this kid, his confidence has got to be.
Yes. Did we lose Leo? We got to get Leo back. We'll see if we can.
Guys, can I just say,
not a great start.
When we went off the air between segments here, I got the worst muscle cramp. I didn't think I was going to make it back for block 2.
You're kidding
Oh,
me.
man, I almost hit the floor coming out of my chair. It was brutal.
That's never good,
Pets'
man.
heads are falling off. Our phone lines aren't working.
That's all good. It's all good. We got each other, right? That's all that matters. Just 3 buddies, 3 foxhole guys. 3 guys in the foxhole. That's all that matters. And yeah, dude, I was talking about that a while ago, Peter, that I had one of those cramps in the middle of the night. I was limping like verbal kint for like 3 days.
Oh, they're brutal.
They are brutal because like you snap, like you got to get that leg straightened out
Quickly, yeah.
quickly. Like you need a knee brace, man.
Yeah, I think Cheese was looking at me kind of funny from the booth.
Yes. That would be strange. If no one knows what you're doing back there and you're putting in a heavy stretch, that is not good.
Why is this guy touching his toes?
Yeah, never a good sign. Never a good sign. All right, Leo, we got you back. Yeah, I'm with you, though. The confidence on this kid, it's got to be there, right, if you're going to wear that suit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I looked at that. Now I don't think I would have went with the – I would have just went with the suit and said, hey, it's my draft. I wouldn't have went with the whole Kansas Dorothy thing either. I don't think I would have put that thing in there too. So I don't know. But I'll tell you, got to give the kid credit anyway.
He seems like he's got some mojo, Leo, but I'm trying to figure out how to frame this question. When do you want you want him to have his personality and the TikTok stuff, but I don't know. I guess it's kind of an old school approach where it's like sooner or later, let's get down to business here and just be a baller on the court. And maybe that stuff can take a bit of a back seat. Or is that just not the mentality these days?
Well, I don't think, I mean, you could just tell by looking at a lot of guys, I don't think that's necessarily the mentality, but hopefully he's going to realize. And I think the best example is LeBron, right? LeBron's made it, and Steph Curry, guys like that they do a lot of things outside of the game of basketball, but they understand one thing. It's all based on who they are as a basketball player. So you create yourself on the court and be that guy and put in the work and so forth. So I think that, as long as you understand that that's what's allowing for anybody to care about even watching your TikTok. They want to know who you are as a player. And if you're a great player and you continue to work, continue to develop, it's going to give whatever else you're doing credibility. So focus in on being a basketball player. And, by all accounts, looking at him, he has some fun on the side or whatever, but looking at him just his freshman year and the work he's put in, it looks like he's a serious player. And I think a young man like that coming in has got to realize, hey, I got a great opportunity here. Okay, this team needs a shooter. That means there's going to be an opportunity for me to come in and play in the NBA right now. And so I'm going to work my tail off. I'm going to do whatever I can to take care of all the deficiencies, weaknesses, whatever I may have in my game, so I can be on the floor making shots.
Leo, I'm glad you said that about the Raptors needing a shooter. And I'm curious your take. Like if the Raptors were drafting, say, 4 or 5 spots higher, do you think that Gradey would have been the same pick? Just out of need for the Raptors, or do you think this was a need versus want situation?
Yeah, no, I think this is a need. Once you start moving up again, you're dealing with different levels of athleticism, all kinds of other things. So, I think you can't speculate that way, but you're looking at who you can get at that time. There is a need for a shooter. I mean, quite frankly, you can look at previous summers and drafts and say, why aren't there more shooters, right? You got to have guys that can shoot the basketball. You got to have guys that can open up the floor. And I think so much of the NBA now you see, let's just get this great athlete. Let's stay in the box, right? Get this great athlete. Let's make him a shooter. Well, that's really hard to do. So I like the idea. Let's get a shooter. Okay, we have one that's available right here. Let's get a shooter, and now let's work on the rest of his game. Okay, let's he's a decent athlete. Let's work on his athleticism, get it, perk it up a little bit. Let's work on his defense. Let's get him right where he needs to be. But the kid can shoot, and that's something that you don't have to teach him. He can do it. Now he's just got to figure out how to get his shot off, how to speed up his game for the NBA. And you're way ahead of the curve. So, I'm all for getting the shooter because that's what he does.
We're chatting with Leo Rautins again. The Raptors taking Gradey Dick last night out of Kansas, the 13th overall pick. And a lot of people were waiting to see if, any of the big names were going to be flipped between, last night and even into this afternoon, Leo. And that did not happen. And there was a report, Chris Haynes reporting that Pascal Siakam wants to stay in Toronto, and effectively he's telling teams that could acquire him that he's not that interested or that keen in talking extension if he goes there. And clearly that's his agent, that's his rep trying to get out there, and that's the nature of the NBA today. You try to control your own narrative. But what is your interpretation of that statement or that report from Chris, and what you make of the idea that Pascal wants to stick around in Toronto?
Well, I'm not surprised he would want to stick around. I think, he started his career here. I think he feels comfortable here. But, I don't necessarily buy into everything, obviously we're hearing or people are throwing out there because so many things are thrown out there for a lot of reasons. I think if a situation comes up, hey, what if he's not happy? What if he's not happy with the environment? What if he's not happy with the new coach, whatever? Is he going to say the same thing? You can't just make a blanket statement like that. You can want to be somewhere. That's fine, and that's great. And it's great for you. It's a great statement for the organization. But when you say you're just not going to sign anywhere else or up your contract, I'm not buying that. I think players will look at situations, and if they see it's a situation that's going to be good for them, not only financially, but it's going to be good for them as far as their career goes. I don't see a player going against that. But I think it's great that he does want to be here. And again, it's a good statement for the organization. And, I heard you guys talking right before I came on that, I'm not big on blowing stuff up. I think that you've got some really good pieces, and you just got to kind of continue to try to tweak and make it better. And it's going to involve some trades. It's definitely going to involve some trades and some movement. So, I just think we're going to see a lot of different things happen. Maybe in the next few weeks, maybe over the next season. But I still think it's encouraging, and I take it as a positive if a player wants to stay.
Yeah, it does seem like that's always been Masai's, philosophy and principles, is that he doesn't want to ever accept just being awful, right? Or sending a message to his players, and I guess by extension the fan base, that we're okay with losing. And maybe that's been the answer right in front of us the whole time, right, Leo? Like, everyone's trying to get a read on what he's going to do. Put aside what you want them to do or what you believe they should do, but just try to get a read on how Masai operates. It wouldn't appear as like it would be a real shift for him to just concede we're going to be awful for 3 or 4 years. Like I don't see that happening.
I don't either. And and I've heard Masai say this. I've had conversations with him, and just my own opinion, looking at the NBA, okay, the talent is being distributed, right? You're seeing more balance, more parity. There are not a lot of what I would call great teams. There's a lot of really good teams. And if you look at the Raptors just last season, okay, it wasn't a season everybody wanted, didn't finish the way everybody wanted, but they're not that far off. They're really not, based on what's out there, okay? And so if you can kind of stay in there, right, and you got to get lucky. I mean, when the Raptors won a championship, there's some luck involved, right? You throw it out there, and, hey, you get Kawhi, right? You don't make a call. You never find out. You make a call. You get Kawhi. You make a move. You trade DeRozan. Boom, you're in the mix. So things can change rapidly. Tweaking can happen very quickly. But I think the idea that you're just you blow it up, I don't see it happening. And the danger is that you blow it up and you get you look at, say, for example, what Washington's doing right now. I can agree that you want to make some changes, and I think they should have made changes a while ago. But if you just want to start from scratch at the bottom, you might be at the bottom for a long, long time.
Speaking of winning championships, a guy that was a member of that team was Fred VanVleet, and he exercised his player option. So I'm curious, if the Raptors want to keep Fred, what does that look like? What are they going to have to come to the table with in order to keep him? And do you think that it's a good idea for the Raptors to try and retain him, or do you think it's better spending that money elsewhere?
Well, that's a great question. I think it also has to depend on where Fred's head is at, right? Does he want to be back? Does he, I think a player going into free agency like that's not a bad thing. I mean, he wants to see what the market's going to bear. You also got to wonder what's going to come his way as far as potential offers. I think there are limitations as far as Fred goes physically. His size, his health, I think, his age. I think there's a lot of things you need to consider if you're going to throw out that kind of money for him. So, and I think it's not just the Raptors that have to consider that. It's all the other teams that may be putting their name in the hat. So I think you're going to take a look and see what the market has to bear. I think you're going to have some conversations with Fred, see where his head is at as well. He's got to be 100% in. The buy-in's got to be big time on his side, because if you're going to make a commitment, and you have to wonder what kind of flexibility he's going to give you for being the team that, launched his career. Is there going to be some consideration for that? So I think there's going to be a lot of factors going into that decision that, we're going to know shortly. But right now, I think there's just we're all just kind of guessing as to where everybody's head is at on that one.
Always appreciate you finding time for us, Leo. We'll do it again down the road. Thank you, buddy.
Sounds great, guys. Thanks.
There he is, Leo Rautins. The NBA draft now officially behind us. Next up, NHL draft down in Nashville too.
Oh, yeah.
What a great
I've heard
city.
a bunch of people on Twitter were talking about just like with the situation in Calgary, Hayes, how there's no loyalty from the players in sports, in all sports. There's just no loyalty. And I'm like, do they have any idea the way that ownership, general manager, like they talk about, they get rid of players in a flat second. Mm-hmm. They always do.
Right.
They're just like, we want somebody better. You're out of here. You're gone. It's just like there's no loyalty, period.
It's a two-way street. Both
It
ways.
is, man.
It is. Like even the draft, which I love, and I want to see stick around forever because I think it's fun. I think it's spectacular theater.
Of course.
It's wild that these guys just have to go where they're picked. Like last night, you look at it, the Thompson.
Unless you're Eric Lindros.
Unless you're Lindros, true. But then even then, it was like, did he really want to go to Philly? Like, there were a couple options, but he ended up in Philly. Still, that's, there's been a couple examples of that. Eli Manning, John Elway, like very few.
Well, if he went somewhere else other than Philly that he wouldn't go there either. So
I guess
they had to put him somewhere that he wanted to go.
Put him somewhere. But still, that's 32 years ago, right? It doesn't happen all the time. And yeah, the two brothers who went back to back last night. One goes to Houston, the other goes to Detroit. Like, with all due respect,
that is the first sign that you're disrespecting Detroit.
It probably is. Has
anything respectful come after with all due respect?
Never. To steal a page from my boy Bruce Cassidy.
That's right.
I gotta say it, Hazy. Like Danny Cleary and Sean Horkoff and Bert and those guys that live down in Detroit, they love it.
I understand that. I'm just saying.
And it's like Birmingham. It's outside of Detroit, but I don't know. They love it, man. They love it.
I was just down there. Cool spot. They got a lot of cool stuff going on. What I'm saying is the weather's a lot different. The state tax is different.
Oh,
Houston's been a lot better.
Detroit is not even in the same combo.
The Pistons have been the worst team in the league for a long time. Like, that's all I'm saying. It's like one brother's going here, the other's going there. We'll see. See how it all plays out.
It makes you wonder if an organization right now in 2023 could go on a heater and be good for 10 years. A Detroit, a Calgary. Can you keep players there long enough that don't say check, please?
Let's come back and get into that. We got Bob McKenzie in 20 minutes, Scotty Mitchell coming up as well, and Jay Zay starting tonight down at the Dome. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, Bob McKenzie coming up in about 15 minutes. It's Scott Mitchell as well. Might have to ask Scotty Mitch about his character, Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball.
What a comment. What a comment.
Nobody in professional sports has to walk back comments more than Rob Manfred. Like, a couple of different things have come out recently. One, he got into it. He was sarcastically kind of chirping the Oakland A's because they had like a reverse protest game in Oakland.
Which
again,
a commissioner shouldn't be doing.
Should never, ever be sarcastic to
God.
fans, ever. and should not comment on something that clearly is volatile.
Yes.
And the guy, he's just, it's buffoonery of the highest level.
It is.
He's sarcastically like, well, it'd be great for them to play in front of guys, more fans than they've ever played. It's like, are you in grade 4?
And then he drops
Rob
the
Manfred?
immunity bomb with the Astros. It's like,
Yeah.
what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah. So he did an interview with Time Magazine, I believe it was, and he's saying that, I kind of regret giving full immunity to the players that were cheating their way to a World Series, which I remember speaking on at the time. We were on the air, and I was flabbergasted that the players would be let off the hook. Like the ones literally cheating. No, we'll give you full immunity. You just got to admit you're cheating, and then we'll blame the manager and GM and batting coach and owner. But you guys are cool, right? Altuve,
What would
you're
have
cool.
been a stern reaction that was fair as well? Was it just you're never playing baseball again?
Well, possibly go talk to Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson. There's a I don't know if it's banned for life, but it should have probably been a good 50-game suspension, don't you think? Like 100.
What about
something.
giving the World Series to the LA Dodgers?
I'd ask you guys as former pro athletes, myself as a semi-professional. I guess I can answer this as well. Would you accept that?
Damn right.
You would.
Get
You
a
didn't win
ring.
4 games.
Wow.
You didn't win 4 games of the World Series, but you'd still take it.
I would have a party at my cottage with a cup. And gladly accept the gorgeous ring. You guys were cheaters. You don't deserve the Stanley Cup. I'll take it, and I will act like I win it and tell everyone the rest of my life that I won the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
I'm
Peter?
trying to think of a parallel to what would be the equivalent of cheating in hockey, and I'm having a tough time coming up with one. But I don't know if I agree with the dog here. I still don't think I would feel like I earned it. Like I get what I get.
Dude,
What I
it's
get.
not
What you're,
about earning. I want to be able to say, I would like if the commissioner, if Jerry comes out and says, O-Dog's team wins the Stanley Cup, I just say I'm a cup winner. Like there's nothing I could do.
Right,
I know.
the cup-winning material.
I get what you're saying, right? Like they cheated, so therefore it should be yours. But at the, I don't know. I just feel like winning such a monumental trophy. Like you want to have that sense of accomplishment. And I don't know if I get it. They cheated, but I don't know if you have that sense of fulfillment by just being like, okay, it's yours. You didn't win
Not a
4
problem.
games, but
Not a problem.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
cup
I have
parties, whole nine.
I think there'd have to be an asterisk at the cup party.
Dude.
When they're like just a massive, huge billboard above your backyard, asterisk. Like,
No.
because you didn't win 4 games. The Dodgers did not beat them 4 times. If anything, it should just be cleared out. But the problem with that is
I
we
would
all
get a
saw it.
videographer to fake impose me scoring the game-winning cup goal and celebrating on the ice with the cup.
Would you
Although
go-
that
You-
did not happen.
Photoshop everybody's faces into the cup
Photoshop.
photo. The cup
That'd
photo
actually be great.
laying, or well, I guess yeah. that'd
Can
be
you
hilarious.
imagine if that happened now? Like 20 years later, we find out the 0-2 Red Wings, something was really crazy going on. Would you get all of your teammates back together, try to get back into Joe Louis Arena or go back down to Carolina, team picture with the cup? Would you do that?
I guess
You
the equivalent
Dude,
would be like
you don't
performance
understand
enhancing.
how far I would take
Right.
it. I would go back and say there's a parade celebrating the 2002 squad in Carolina.
I'd be there, buddy. I'd be there. I'd be at your cup party. I'd be having a great time. Hour 2 coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.